On its surface, the story that we just heard from the gospel about the 10 lepers, it seems to lay stress on Jesus being hurt by those 9 lepers who did not return to thank him. Of course, gratitude is one of the aspects of this story, and as such, it helps us to understand Jesus' humanity, that he was being hurt by those 9 lepers' ingratitude. But we should not make too much out of it, because Jesus was not that type of a person who wanted to be thanked. We know from his very life, he never desired gratitude, or even when people came to make him king, he escaped. Whenever he healed people, he gave them strict orders not to tell anyone. So Jesus was not looking for gratitude from the people. But what this story is trying to tell us is a beautiful meditation on our relationship to God. There are so many points of connection in this story, how we can relate to God. In any relationship, we try to use various means of communication, points of connection. I am always amazed at the Facebook, how people get connected to one another. I have known some people have like thousands of Facebook friends, people whom they don't even know. It's amazing how we can connect by using various means of communication and strengthen our relationship. This little story of the 10 lepers is a beautiful story that has so many ways of connecting to God. And we call that prayer. Anything and everything that we do in order to relate to God, we call that our prayers. And one of the 8th century mystic, St. John Damascene, he recognizes 4 ways of connecting to God in this beautiful story. First, he calls adoration, acknowledging God for who he is, his power, his authority over our life, his power over our sins. And when we acknowledge that, we adore God, we glorify God. And that's what happened to, the Syrian leper Naaman in our first reading, as well as those 10 lepers in the gospel. They recognized God's power to heal them, to make them whole. Even we do that in our own lives, in our relationship with God. The second point of communication or connection is what St. John Damascene calls contrition, acknowledging who we are, acknowledging our sinfulness, our brokenness, our difficulties in life. And those lepers, they recognized that. They were isolated. They could not do anything to connect back to their families, their communities. And they were contrite. And that's what contrition does. We realize our powerlessness. That's what makes us to seek help from the one who has power, God. So acknowledging our sinfulness, confession, contrition, repentance, it's a beautiful prayer, way of communicating, way of connecting to God, relating to God. Then the third aspect is what he calls supplications, bringing our needs bringing our desires, our petitions, not only ours but others too, before God. And we see how those lepers, they cried out to Jesus, Jesus, have mercy on us. And they pleaded, and that's what we do too. When we bring our supplications, our petitions, our needs before God. Again, bringing those needs, again, a way of connecting to God, relating to God. And then finally, thanksgiving. When we realize God's blessings, all that God has done in our lives, the best response is to be grateful, is to thank. And those 9 lepers, they failed, and only one returned to thank God, because he wanted to relate to God through his thanksgiving. It's a beautiful story showing us different ways of relating to God, and all are important. It's like the Facebook where we can connect, and Jesus becomes that friend. I should say Jesus, he is the greatest network that we have, because he, through the gift of his communion, which we will receive in a few minutes, he unites us to him, to God. He also unites us to one another, the body of believers. We are bound by faith. We are bound by our healing through his love. We are bound by our redemption through his sacrifice on the cross. And so Jesus becomes that greatest network to unite us to him. And so today, as we come to receive him, we not only receive him, but also we connect ourselves to one another, relate to one another. So when we come to receive him today, let us be grateful, let us cherish that, not only the gift, but also the giver who gives us that gift. On a different note, we are just not even a month away from our presidential election. And as those candidates are fighting for our vote, it is important for us to know that as Christians, we have the duty and also the right to exercise our vote. This is my first time opportunity to vote, and sometimes I wonder what a choice I have. Sometimes I feel like I should vote for myself. But they strictly told me I cannot be a president. I can only vote. The 4 bishops of Kansas, our Archbishop, as well as the bishops of Wichita Diocese and Salina and Dodge City, they have produced a video message for us, giving us some points of guidance, based on the wisdom of the church. And so today we are invited to view this video and use the help that the bishops provide us based on the guidance of the church to make our own discernment as we make our choice for our vote.
My fellow bishops and I would like to take this opportunity to talk to you about the duties of faithful citizenship in an election year. Just as living a Christian life involves much more than going to church on Sunday, so responsible citizenship requires more than simply voting on election day.
Voting is nonetheless a crucially important part of citizenship, one that should always be taken very seriously.
When we vote, our choices must never be reduced to a mere calculation of self-interest. Each of us has a moral obligation to work toward the common good. Our vote should always be cast in favor of what is best for society.
Many of the political issues being debated today can and should be considered in the light of Catholic social teaching. This is not to say that Catholics need always arrive at the same conclusions about what policies are best, but our political preferences should be shaped by the application of Catholic moral principles to current circumstances.
For example, all Catholics should work to ensure that all people, and especially the poor, have access to high-quality health care. A Catholic viewpoint is also needed in the debate over immigration policy, a debate that has grown increasingly polarized and even toxic.
Catholics should recognize the need for good stewardship of the environment so that future generations can enjoy the gifts of God's creation. These are but examples of the many issues that Catholic social teaching can help us think through.
It is also important to place special emphasis on those issues where Catholics must speak with a unified voice because of the reality that certain laws directly contradict church teaching, the natural law, and the good of society.
In our country, over 1 million unborn children are killed by abortion every single year. All Catholics have a moral obligation to keep this human rights catastrophe at the forefront of their minds when voting.
Catholics must also open their eyes to the attacks upon religious freedom that are proliferating in our society. More and more government agencies are attempting to punish individuals and institutions that adhere to the truth that marriage can only be between a man and a woman, and that every child deserves a mother and a father.
Finally, Catholics should also carefully consider the critical role that judges increasingly play in deciding issues like abortion, marriage, and religious freedom.
It is now the case that judges and other unelected officials all too often take these debates out of the hands of the democratic process and decide them for themselves, leaving concerned citizens with no recourse.
It is thus absolutely essential that we have judges who respect the right to life and marriage as a covenant between one man and one woman, and who will protect the religious freedom and rights of conscience.
We appreciate your taking the time to listen today. This election year, we encourage you to prayerfully consider what we have said and what the Church teaches about the duties of faithful citizenship. God bless you.